A congressman just told the Attorney General of the United States to her face that he believes she committed perjury. Not in a hallway, not in a press release, in a congressional hearing, on the record, with photographs on the table and a witness statement in his hand. And Pam Bondi sat there and could not answer. That is where this starts, and it only gets worse from there. Representative Ted Lieu came into that hearing room with two photographs, both showing Prince Andrew at various parties with Jeffrey Epstein, both already part of the public record in the Epstein case. And Lieu asked Bondi a simple question. The law that Congress passed to protect Epstein's trafficking victims, was that the reason the DOJ redacted the face of the victim in those photographs? Bondi confirmed it. Yes, she said, we were following the law Congress passed to protect victims. And then Lieu flipped it. Because here is what that confirmation actually means. If the person in those photographs with Prince Andrew is a trafficking victim, and Bondi just confirmed she is because that is why her face was redacted, then under the Federal Trafficking Victims Protection Act, it is not only Epstein who is criminally liable. Anyone who facilitated, assisted, or benefited from that trafficking operation is also potentially liable. That is what the law says, and those photographs are evidence of exactly that. So Lieu asked the question that followed directly from Bondi's own answer. You just confirmed she is a trafficking victim. You have photographs showing Prince Andrew with that victim. That is evidence. Why have you not opened an investigation into Prince Andrew? Why did your department close the case against Epstein's clients entirely in July 2025? Bondi did not answer. Lieu kept going. He read from the July 2025 DOJ memorandum, the one that said, in the department's own words, we did not uncover evidence that would support opening an investigation against uncharged third parties. Lieu's response to that was direct. He said the photographs he was holding right now, which Bondi's own department had redacted to protect a trafficking victim, were more than sufficient evidence to open an investigation into Prince Andrew. The evidence was on the table, literally on the table in front of the Attorney General, and the department had still closed the case. And then Lieu said something that almost never happens in a congressional hearing. He said, I am placing on the record that I believe you have committed perjury, because everything you said about there being no evidence is contradicted by what is right in front of us, on video, in photographs, in testimony. It is all there. But he was not finished, because Lieu then brought out something else entirely. A witness statement, a person who said they drove Donald Trump in a limousine and heard directly what Trump said to Jeffrey Epstein on a cell phone during that ride. A person who said Trump became so angry at one point that he stopped the limousine and was going to physically harm Jeffrey Epstein. A person who said when police arrived at the scene of Epstein's alleged rape, they concluded it was not a suicide. Lieu said this witness had never been interviewed by investigators, and he told Bondi directly, you need to interview this witness immediately. Bondi tried to respond. Lieu cut her off. He said he had not asked her a question. He said his time belonged to him, and he used that time to say what he came to say. Over 1,000 trafficking victims connected to Epstein's operation. Not one of the men who used that operation has been held accountable. Not one. And the department responsible for holding them accountable had just closed the investigation and said there was no evidence worth pursuing. Now, let us put this in the broader context, because this hearing did not happen in isolation. Lieu was sitting in a room that has already heard in previous hearings about 4,700 suspicious bank transfers totaling over $1 billion. About FBI Director Kash Patel promising no cover-ups and then reportedly getting into a furious standoff with Bondi over the release of documents. About the client list Bondi said was on her desk that her own department said did not exist. About 20 names in FD 302 victim reports that have never been publicly released. About a July 2025 memo that closed the door on investigating anyone. And now, in this hearing, Lieu was adding to that record. Photographs that Bondi's own department authenticated by redacting a victim's face. A federal law that makes facilitators of trafficking criminally liable. A witness who claims direct knowledge of Trump's relationship with Epstein and has never been interviewed. And a direct accusation of perjury aimed at the sitting Attorney General of the United States. The word perjury is not a small word. It means lying under oath. It means a federal crime. It means a congressman looked at the Attorney General, reviewed what she had said under oath, compared it to the evidence sitting on the table, and concluded that the two things could not both be true. Either the evidence is not what it appears to be, or what Bondi said under oath is not true. Lieu made his position clear on which of those two options he believed. And Bondi's response was to say she agreed with Lieu that previous administrations had failed, that Merrick Garland had failed, that Bill Barr had failed, that Alex Acosta had failed. She pointed backwards, to people who are no longer in office, to decisions made before she took the job, as if the question being asked was about history rather than about the photographs on the table right now, and the witness who has never been called, and the investigation that was closed last July. Lieu's answer to that was the sharpest thing said in that room all day. He told her directly, "You have the power to change things. You have the authority to reopen this. You have the subpoena power, the investigative authority, the resources. And instead of using any of it, you are doing the opposite. You are protecting them." That last sentence is the one that matters. You are protecting them. Not incompetence, not bureaucratic delay, not resource limitations. Protection, an active choice to not pursue the people Epstein trafficked victims to, a deliberate decision to close the investigation and say there is no evidence when evidence is sitting on the table being held by a congressman who forced the department to redact it in the first place.
Over 1,000 trafficking victims. The men who used Epstein's operation are known to investigators. Their names appear in victim testimony. Their connections appear in financial records. Their faces appear in photographs that the DOJ itself authenticated as showing a trafficking victim. And not one of them has been charged. Not one has been publicly identified by law enforcement. Not one has sat in a courtroom and faced the women whose lives were destroyed. The July 2025 memo said there was no evidence. The photographs say otherwise. The witness statement says otherwise. The billion-dollar financial network says otherwise. The FD 302 reports with over 20 names say otherwise. And the United States representative stood in that hearing room and said it all directly to the person responsible for making it right. Pam Bondi left that hearing without answering the question, without committing to interview the witness, without reopening the investigation, without explaining how photographs her own department redacted to protect a trafficking victim do not constitute evidence sufficient to open a case against the man standing next to that victim. She left, and the 1,000 victims are still waiting. Subscribe. Hit the like button and tell me in the comments, after perjury accusations, photographs, and a witness who has never been interviewed, what would it actually take for this investigation to be reopened? Because based on what happened in that room, I genuinely do not know anymore. And that uncertainty, the fact that a sitting congressman can accuse the Attorney General of perjury with photographs on the table and a witness statement in hand and nothing changes, is the most honest summary of where this case stands right now. The evidence is there. The authority is there. The only thing missing is the will to use it. And until that changes, the people responsible for what happened to those victims will continue to walk free every single day. Because here is the final thing that needs to be said about what happened in that room. Lieu came in with evidence, real evidence, photographs authenticated by the government itself, a federal law that makes the people in those photographs potentially criminally liable, a witness with direct knowledge who has never been called, and a memo that closed the investigation despite all of it. He laid it all out in his allotted time, clearly and without theatrics, and he ended by saying he believed the person sitting across from him had lied under oath. That is an extraordinary moment. It does not happen often in American political life, and the fact that it happened, that it had to happen, that it required a congressman to stand up in a hearing and say the word perjury out loud before anyone paid attention, tells you everything you need to know about how far this case has been allowed to drift from accountability. The evidence is not hidden anymore. It is on the table, literally on the table. And the question is no longer whether it exists. The question is whether anyone with the authority to act on it ever will. And that uncertainty, the fact that a sitting congressman can accuse the Attorney General of perjury with photographs on the table and a witness statement in hand and nothing changes, is the most honest summary of where this case stands right now. The evidence is there. The authority is there. The only thing missing is the will to use it. And until that changes, the people responsible for what happened to those victims will continue to walk free every single day. Because here is the final thing that needs to be said about what happened in that room. Lieu came in with evidence, real evidence, photographs authenticated by the government itself, a federal law that makes the people in those photographs potentially criminally liable, a witness with direct knowledge who has never been called, and a memo that closed the investigation despite all of it. He laid it all out in his allotted time, clearly and without theatrics, and he ended by saying he believed the person sitting across from him had lied under oath. That is an extraordinary moment. It does not happen often in American political life, and the fact that it happened, that it had to happen, that it required a congressman to stand up in a hearing and say the word perjury out loud before anyone paid attention, tells you everything you need to know about how far this case has been allowed to drift from accountability. The evidence is not hidden anymore. It is on the table, literally on the table. And the question is no longer whether it exists. The question is whether anyone with the authority to act on it ever will.